Thousands of concerned Queenslanders have attended a meeting in Toowoomba, the epicentre of the youth crime crisis. Residents admitting they are scared to leave their own homes and are considering vigilante actions. It is clear something needs to be done. The Queensland Government will introduce new legislation to tackle youth crime next week, but many stakeholders say they've been left in the dark. Grandmother and youth crime advocate Julie West joins us now live from Hervey Bay, along with the former Queensland Corrections boss Keith Hamburger in Brisbane. Thanks for your time, really appreciate it. Julie, to you first up, you've started a petition that now has more than 150,000 signatures. What made you start it?
Emma. Emma would have had a birthday a couple of days ago, but she's dead. Her husband, and if you just think about it from your perspective, Karl, if Jasmine woke you in the middle of the night and said, Karl, close your eyes, Karl. Karl, someone's at the door, and you open the door and you start getting bashed by two teenagers and getting stabbed repeatedly, and she grabs Harper and runs out the door to what she thinks is safety, only to have the offenders follow her out the door and stab her in the heart. That person that did that to Jasmine is now going to probably be jailed for about 6 years and be back on the streets. Do you feel that's okay?
Well, I don't need to tell you what I feel about it.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to Lee.
Yeah. So you've had this 150,000 people who feel the same way you do. We've spoken to Russell Field, whose son Matthew was killed, and he said the government has not reached out to him, not even reached out to him. You've spoken to so many of these victims' families this week. What have they said?
Look, Karl, everybody's absolutely... You know, we understand they're doing some great work about rehabilitation and getting these kids, you know, breaking the cycle and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, like, we need to have absolute consequences, and that's what's missing here. We understand they're doing some great work and we want intervention. We don't want it to happen, but if it does happen, we want real consequences, and that's what we're missing here, and everybody believes the same. They need minimum mandatory sentences. These kids shouldn't be allowed to get away with it, and I don't care whether it's their first offence, their second offence, their 30th offence in some of these cases. They need to be put away for a long time to allow these processes to be able to take effect. All
right, I'm going to circle back to you in a second, but I do want to go to Keith. Keith, what's happening inside our correction centres? And we're hearing stories of them being overcrowded, that watch houses are spilling out. We saw the situation last week with Stephen Miles saying a whole bunch of kids got let out and there was a crime spree. That can't happen, right? What is going on that we don't see?
Well, Karl, the whole system's broken here in Queensland, and the points that Julie just made are quite shocking. The fact that young people can be back on the street so quickly and commit further crimes is quite awful, and there is no need for it, sadly. There is a different system we could use that would take these young people off the street early in their offending career and provide security and safety for the community.
OK, we saw last night the good people at Toowoomba, they've had enough. Given what's happened there in the last couple of weeks, it's beyond painful. I know people in Brisbane who are now frightened at night. They're concerned about their families being physically attacked in their own homes. But what can we do in terms of these kids and the overcrowding in prisons, and also, I mean, what do we do if the number of kids keeps going up? How are we supposed to tackle the problem and try and sort it out?
Yeah, well, a holistic approach is required. Dealing with the young people, at the moment, if a child's at risk and that they could be wandering the street at 2 o'clock in the morning, or they might have actually committed a crime, police take them to a watch house and then they're processed. What we need is a proper assessment centre where those children are taken off the street, fully assessed for their mental health, their physical health, their family circumstances, education, the whole deal, and then taken to the court with a comprehensive plan to deal with that. And then there needs to be not big detention centres like we've got at the moment. We need small 24/7 facilities where we have a relatively small number of children that are very intensively dealt with in terms of rehabilitation, etc. And I agree with Julie's point that she's very, very concerned that some of these serious offenders come out at a very short period. And in fact, the victims quite often are forgotten in this process. We need much more consultation with victims about this.
Well, I hope you're being listened to. Are you?
Not at the moment,
Okay,
no, sadly.
all right, that's good. That's good to hear that someone with your wealth of experience is not being listened to. I'm going to go back to Julie just finally. Last night, I saw in Toowoomba a local woman stand up and shout out, "What happens if they come at you with a machete?" Right? And so that's the level of anxiety. So finally, what needs to happen?
Well, look, Karl, we need clear direction. You know, like we were up here in Hervey Bay a couple of days ago and our whole caravan park got knocked over by youth. The police couldn't do anything. I said to my husband not to go out because I was frightened he was getting stabbed. We don't know what our rights are as humans. We want to know, can we actually defend our properties? Can we actually defend ourselves? Because, geez, it's getting scary out there. And one of the points that was said in Toowoomba, which I thought was fantastic, how come we're being locked up inside our houses and the criminals are being allowed to roam free?
Also, one other point before we go. What happens in the situation where people have had enough? Someone's in their own home and a kid who is committing a crime gets taken out by a family who's just trying to protect their own family. Or someone stops someone stealing a car and that person ends up dying. These are real questions. Well, hundreds of concerned Queensland residents have attended a community forum overnight to discuss the rise of youth crime in Toowoomba. Residents admitting they're considering becoming vigilantes. One woman piped up and said, "What happens when these youths come at you with a machete?" People have had enough, Brini, and for 1,000 people to turn up, or at least 1,000 people turn up there and online, people want answers and they want to feel safe in their homes. This is not just Queensland, right across Australia.
Karl, this is the biggest issue in Queensland. In the last state election in 2020, Anastasia Palaszczuk was returned easily with a greater margin on the back of keeping Queenslanders safe. Queenslanders now don't feel safe and the government knows it and they're under immense pressure, which is why Anastasia Palaszczuk has made very few public appearances since her return from holidays. The anger last night in Toowoomba was palpable. We've got an appalling police minister here, Mark Ryan, who's totally and utterly out of his depth and doesn't know how to communicate properly. People don't feel safe in their homes because people have been killed defending their homes, Karl, in Queensland. It's happened. Youth offenders have run people down in the streets and killed them while they're walking a dog. And people like Todai Kefu, one of the greatest and most fearsome wallabies of all time, wasn't even safe in his own home. It is a real issue, Karl, and the government knows it. And it has to fix it fast.
Well, Anna's deputy, Stephen Miles, came out last week, and I think rightly so. He accused the judiciary system of letting out people, kids on bail, and then they committed crimes. I thought he was A1A right about that. And then Cameron Dick, the Treasurer, came out and said, "Oh, well, hang on, that's not what you believe in here." So they're not even on the same page.
It's because there's politics at play, Karl. There's politics here.
Agree.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God, Karl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Karl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
That never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?
Always happens.